This video is sponsored by Audible. Happy Smelloween, everybody! I feel like I haven't made a Halloween video in a really long time. And I know for sure I haven't made a worst superhero video in a while. So I figured I'll kill 2 vampires with 1 garlic-infused bullet. That's right, today on the worst superhero movies ever made, we are watching Blade. All of them. Now, the Blade movies kind of have a reputation for being hilarious. If you guys watch What We Do in the Shadows, you'll know that they make fun of Blade at every opportunity.
Calling in via Skype, we have Wesley over there, the day walker. Hey, Wesley. Look at him then.
God, not this fucking guy.
And as far as the comics are concerned, I think Blade is one of the most neglected Marvel characters, next to like Spider-Woman and Sentry. He might show up in a Marvel story, but he's very rarely a big-time player. And sometimes when he shows up in something, he's not even the same character.
Oh shit, it's a white guy!
But when Blade got his first movie, it was a big deal. A big enough deal to get them some sequels after that. But it's pretty fair to say that these movies haven't exactly aged gracefully. But before we hop into Blade 1, let's get a word from our sponsor. Let me tell you guys, I love to be told a story. If I could hire somebody to tell me a story every night before bed, I would do it. But since I'm always on the go, it's hard to find time to enjoy a nice story. But that's where this week's sponsor, Audible, comes in. Audible is, of course, the leading provider of audio entertainment. Entertainment that you can enjoy just about anywhere. And I mean anywhere. All of my connected devices know exactly where I left off on my audiobook so I can keep making progress. So no matter where I am, I don't have to miss out on whatever I'm listening to. And when you sign up for Audible, you get 1 free audiobook credit every month. And as usual, I love to tell you guys what I spent my credit on. And as for what I'm listening to right now, I actually have some shocking news. I am not going to recommend The Wheel of Time this month. While I still love that series and I'm still working my way through it, I took a little break to start listening to Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. The TV adaptation has been airing and I really wanted to get more context straight from the source. The audiobook also comes with a super cool accompanying PDF with little pictures. Check it out. I wish more audiobooks did this, it's pretty sick. So if you guys want to start listening, you can try Audible with a 30-day free trial. This opens up access to thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and more. Just go to audible.com/cosmonaut or text cosmonaut to 500-500. Again, that's audible.com/cosmonaut or text cosmonaut to 500-500. And of course, I would like to thank Audible for sponsoring this video. So Blade 1 has probably the coolest introductory scene you could ask for in a movie like this. The movie opens up at night with a horny doofus being blue-balled by a sexy vampire lady. She lures him to a nightclub inside a meat freezer, which is pretty weird. But horniness has never stopped me before and it's not gonna start now. But then this guy realizes this isn't just any old nightclub. It's a vampire nightclub.
Vampire nightclub!
I think it's hilarious that all these vampires are just gonna fuck up this one single guy. Like, she did not bring enough snacks for the whole class, but I don't know, I guess they don't mind. But before this poor horny bastard gets eaten, we get the sickest character introduction ever. The vibe completely changes. A moment ago, these vampires were having the time of their unlives, and now all 300 of them are scared shitless. It is so fucking cool. And it's in this scene where we learn everything we need to know about Blade. Here is his full list of likes and dislikes. Blade dislikes vampires. Blade likes killing vampires. That's it, that's the whole list. Now, the problem with the later movies is that this list never gets updated. It never changes. Blade never develops or grows as a character. He never gets a character arc. He never gets character development. So our only trait for Blade is that the man simply loves to kill things. And it's kind of insane just how indiscriminate he is with his violence. He will beat up and try to shoot a police officer in broad daylight. Blade does not sneak into places. He either teleports or he walks through the front door and starts beating up everybody he sees.
Chotomate. You have an invitation, Kado.
He will rip out your throat and throw it at another guy. Man, woman, or child, he does not care. As long as you are a vampire, he has no mercy. And the thing about Blade in these movies is that he has no remorse. He enjoys this shit. He's always smiling with pure glee as he fights hordes of undead creatures.
Can't tell you, they'll kill me. Kill you, motherfucker, I'll kill you.
And this is the funniest part of Wesley Snipes' performance. Look at this shit and tell me this was the director's idea. It's dorky. He's a dork, but he's also really cool. I feel so conflicted right now. So Blade kills like everybody in here, and then he confronts a vampire he supposedly has history with. And he strangely does not kill the vampire. That's kind of something Blade does every once in a while. Sometimes he just lets a vampire live so that he can show up later, scare them, and kill them for real. In the first scene, he lights this guy on fire and then he leaves. And as a first-time viewer, you're not supposed to think that a vampire can survive this. And that's fine. But Blade isn't supposed to think that. He's supposed to be a professional here. He has all the time in the world to finish this vampire off, and he simply chooses not to. After that, the vampire gets sent to a hospital morgue, and he comes back to life, and he fucks up a bunch of people, and Blade, for some reason, instantly knows this and comes back to kill him again.
Came back to finish you off.
I don't understand. Why didn't you kill him the first time?
Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
Never mind, I take it back. This movie is so good. Anyway, the vampire gets away, and Blade is about to leave too, but then he sees one of the people that got attacked by the vampire, and he hesitates. And I really like the editing here. For the most part, I kind of don't have any issues with the editing in this movie. I think it's pretty effective. So Blade takes her to his secret lair with his wise old mentor figure that will 100% definitely not die in this movie, and they decide to try and help the newly turned vampire nurse lady. They inject her with, I shit you not, Papa John's garlic sauce, and yeah, after that, the next chunk of the movie is not as exciting. After the bombastic, action-packed opening, I kinda lost interest. The middle chunk of this movie spends a lot of time trying to flesh out vampire culture, and we're introduced to the main villain, who's this vampire higher-up who hates his bosses, and he's not really a very interesting or compelling villain. He's just another vampire. And that's kind of it. All the vampires are just kind of the same person. They're all just generically evil. He wants to acquire ultimate power and be super strong and take over this city. And yeah, spoilers, the rest of the villains in this series are exactly the same as this. And while the villain stuff is happening, Blade kind of wanders around explaining vampire culture to his lady friend. And I don't know, I think the main problem here is that I know what a vampire is. Every vampire story has lore that they like to keep, and lore that they say doesn't matter. Sometimes you can use crosses and holy water to kill a vampire. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can stake them in the heart, and sometimes they can only be killed by punching them really hard. And I kind of hate how some movies try to be cheeky and they say shit like, obviously crosses and holy water don't work. Duh, this is real life. And in real life, we kill vampires with guns. Like, it's all bullshit anyway. Vampires aren't real, so just play it straight. I tend to prefer stories where everything works. Like in the Buffy universe, you can kill a vampire in like 100 different ways, and the series is more interesting for that. When I watch Angel, it kind of feels like he's more at risk of dying than Buffy is. I think that's kind of cool. But Blade is like, forget what you learned in the movies. You need this to kill a vampire. And he hands the lady a gun with, I shit you not, garlic-infused bullets. You should never be talking down to somebody if you're carrying something as stupid as that. And the main issue with the story in this first half is that the movie relies very heavily on you not knowing that Blade is also a vampire. Like, it's supposed to be kind of a twist, but there's no way to watch this movie without knowing he's a vampire too. But I gotta say, if I did not know that shit, this movie would be like 20% more interesting. This movie has a lot of boring world building, but it is occasionally broken up by either a really cool action scene or something else utterly insane. Like a vampire fucking destroying a tiny Asian child in the middle of the day. What the fuck? How did she survive that? However, the movie does pick up a lot once the mentor figure has his stereotypical death scene that motivates the main character. And after that, the movie gets really fucking cool again. We get into eldritch vampire gods and a twist that is pretty effective. So effective that I kind of don't want to spoil it. But legitimately, the final battle in this movie is raw as hell. It's just a fucking beatdown. Blade finally breaks his one rule and drinks blood, which gives him a power-up that lets him just brutalize everybody. And this final battle ends with what is probably the most insane action movie one-liner of all time.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
You are so corny.
And by the end of this movie, I had a big-ass smile on my face, just like Blade himself. This movie has moments that are really cool and really effective, and then it also has moments that are just absurd, like vampires using sunblock to become immune to the sun, or vampires making stock jaguar noises. Sometimes Blade is the coolest motherfucker ever, and sometimes he is just a weird goofball. Sometimes the special effects are really good, and sometimes they're horribly dated. Sometimes the action has some genuinely impressive choreography, and sometimes it could use a little work. But it does have more hits than misses. And overall, I don't think this movie's that bad. It's got some really cool concepts, the atmosphere is on point, the story's a little bit simple, but it is effective and it has some actually compelling story beats. But above all else, the action really carries this movie. This movie's honestly kinda awesome. So yeah, this is not one of the worst superhero movies ever made. It's going right where it belongs in the actually good tier. And I'm gonna go ahead and give Blade a 7 out of 10. I don't have a lot to say about Blade 2. It's kind of whatever. I could probably sum this movie up in one sentence.
It was a movie.
For one, the action is a lot less interesting than in the first movie. There's a lot of moments where people kind of wait patiently for Blade to kick their asses. The first movie had such a strong focus on the choreography. Wesley Snipes actually knows martial arts, and you can tell that they use that to the film's advantage. But here, they're starting to rely a little too much on special effects. And some fights are just fully CG. Like, compare the final battle in the first movie to the final battle in this one. It's so fucking bad. And the effects in this movie are certainly more ambitious. They aren't as dated as the CGI in the last movie, but again, they're overused. And unfortunately, no Blade movie is ever going to have an opening that's as cool as the one in the first movie. The opening scene here mainly serves to recap what happened in the last movie.
I have all their strengths, none of their weaknesses.
Actually, I hate to break it to you, Blade, but you do have some of their weaknesses. You also die if you are staked through the heart. Most people do. You also die if you're shot in the head with a silver bullet, or any bullet, for that matter. You actually might have more weaknesses than them. The opening also establishes that this whole time, Blade has been trying to find his old mentor figure, Whistler, who died in the last movie, but is now alive, even though he shot himself in the head in the last movie. That's fine. That's okay, movie. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to question it. Anyway, he's a vampire now, too. Except he's also not a vampire now, either. He gets cured. Because in the last movie, Blade did develop a cure for vampirism. You might be thinking that them having a cure for vampirism kind of just solves all of the problems in this story, and you would be right, but we're gonna get into that much later. For now, Blade's mentor is back, he's not a vampire anymore, and he's not dead. The screenwriters very clearly just wanted him back on the team, so there you go, he's back. This is such a funny retcon because it's very clear they didn't know they were going to get a sequel, and they really need people to hang out with Blade, so fuck it, just bring him back. Anyway, the main threat of this movie is that there's a new strain of vampire. There are now super vampires. They're super strong, and they're immune to silver and garlic, and you can't shoot them with a gun like you can with the other vampires, and most important of all, they're killing the normal vampires. So the normal vampires are like, Blade, can you help us? We have a bit of a problem. And he's like, yeah, sure. which seems kind of out of character, but again, I'm just going to go with it. So the vampires hook up Blade with a vampire hit squad, and one of them is played by Ron Perlman.
What was that?
Can you blush?
That's gotta be racist. There's no way.
Oh, and another one of these vampires is played by Donnie Yen. I'm expecting some pretty cool action from him. Oh, never mind. A majority of this movie is just Blade and the vampire gang going around, shooting guns at super vampires, and then saying, the guns don't work, they have no weaknesses. And then they just keep shooting the guns anyway. Sometimes the super vampires just fucking tank the bullets and they don't give a shit. And sometimes the bullets are pretty good at fending off the vampires. But anyway, after a lot of really boring action, they find out that the super vampires were made in a lab. And that they were made by this vampire overlord guy that hired them all to kill the super vampires in the first place. So he wants Blade to go out and fight the super vampires that he created, but he also wants the super vampires to succeed in taking over the world. Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know what you want me to say. Also, the leader of the super vampires, like the main super vampire guy, is really mad, and he wants revenge against his father for creating him. And it's kind of just the same motivations as the guy from, like, Blade Runner, except done way worse, because all the development for all of the villains in this movie is saved for the very end. Everyone's motivations are kind of understandable. The plot is not that hard to follow, but it's not very good. And in the end, Blade just kind of has to kill all the vampires by himself, exactly the same as he did in the last movie. It even has the same setup as the last movie. The vampires capture him, he gets weak, and then he has to drink a lot of blood to get a power-up, and then he just fights everybody, except it's not as cool, because I've already fucking seen this. The character development is either non-existent or bad, the story is uninteresting, and the action is just relying way too much on these newfangled special effects. I don't know who directed this, but they got a lot to answer for. What the fuck? Anyway, I'm gonna pretend I didn't read that and throw this one on the tier list. 5 out of 10. It certainly is a movie. So now we get to the real garbage, the real reason I wanted to make this video. See, the other two movies are whatever, but this one is actual dog shit. This movie has everything that I look for when I'm making one of these videos. The dialogue is absolutely terrible.
You cock-juggling thunder cunt!
The performances are even worse.
Are you okay? Are you tired?
The action is as lazy as it gets, and worst of all, the atmosphere from the previous two movies is completely gone. This is now the mid-2000s where every movie looked exactly the same, and they cover up their lackluster action with a bunch of explosions, and of course, bad CG. I love this part right here. They use this same shot of Wesley Snipes 3 times in a row. Watch this. There's one. There's the second one. And there's the third one. But most notably, most infamously, many members of the production on this movie did not like the script. The director of the first Blade movie was going to come back and make this one, but he declined because the script was that bad. I love this outtake where Natasha Lyonne can't even say the lines because they're that stupid.
It'll be only a matter of weeks before it takes over the rest of their world. I'm serious. Dead serious. There's one other thing, Blade.
And worst of all, Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson both thought it was dog shit too. Snipes hated the script so much that he decided he would try to sabotage the movie. Snipes reportedly called the director racist, refused to cooperate in most scenes. He also hated Ryan Reynolds, and honestly, can you blame him? And he was so insubordinate that he just decided to stay in his trailer all day smoking weed. He would only refer to himself on set as Blade.
I'm Parker's stand-in. Parker's in her trailer smoking pot and doing push-ups.
and it got so bad that in one scene, he refused to open his eyes in a scene where Blade is supposed to be waking up, so they had to CGI the eyes in. Yes, CGIs, if you will. And all of this is just because the script is bad. I mean, how bad could this script really be?
Ever since I can remember, I've had this knife of sadness in my heart. The moment that I take it out, I'll just die.
Okay, I get it. Now, most of this is from secondhand accounts of people on set, so take it with a grain of salt, but after watching this movie, it kinda adds up. And there are so many of these secondhand accounts that I'm honestly inclined to believe them.
Here's what I'll say about Blade Trinity. If you watch, and by the way, I'm friends with the writer-director, and he agrees with me on this. If you just sit and watch Blade Trinity, it's a D-. It just doesn't work. But if you know what they went through to get that movie made, it is an A+. The fact that movie exists puts it above Citizen Kane.
So anyway, this movie begins with a...
In the movies, Dracula wears a cape. And some old English guy always manages to save the day at the last minute with crosses and holy water.
Deadpool monologue? Well, I don't like that. After Ryan Reynolds says some dumb shit, we open the movie with some vampire spelunkers. How do I know they're vampires? Well, because one of them flips off the sun. It's very subtle storytelling, you see. These vampires are investigating this ancient tomb when a freaky armored monster attacks them. And damn, the lighting in this ancient tomb is going kind of crazy. After that scene, we get another opening scene of some guys talking about vampires on TV.
Vampires.
Vampire.
Vampires.
Vampires. Creatures.
Vampires.
Vampires.
Vampires. Vampires. Sexual.
Now, when I said that nothing is going to top the opening scene from the first movie, I was not joking. We have 2 introductory scenes and a monologue from a guy we don't even know that isn't even connected to these other 2 scenes. After all of that, we finally get to see Blade fighting vampires.
Vampires. Vampires.
But anyway, it doesn't help that when we finally do see Blade, it's very clear that Wesley Snipes is just not fucking trying anymore. And one thing you should probably know about this movie is that most of his scenes are just of his stuntman stepping in for him. You would be surprised how much they use the stuntman for. Blade needs to run across the street? Well, let's just call him the stuntman. Blade has to run through a crowd of people? Let's get the stuntman. Blade has to listen to his teammates as they talk? Yeah, that's right. Gonna need the stuntman for this one. If there's ever a moment where you don't see Wesley Snipes' face, you can basically guarantee he is not there. Also, Blade always looks confused now. Like, Wesley Snipes keeps making this weird face, and I don't know what emotion he's trying to convey here. But anyway, Blade mows these guys down pretty easily, but when he stakes his last target, it's revealed that he's not a vampire. Blade just killed a normal guy, but he's already done that, like, a lot. But the difference here is that he's been caught on candid camera.
Yeah, I got you. I got you on camera.
And now people on the news are talking about him. And like, this is going under the assumption that the people in this world all of a sudden know everything that we know.
You should focus in on characters like this Blade criminal.
It is never revealed that anybody knows who he is. But now they're talking like they've always known. He's like a celebrity. It's not like he did a fucking interview at any point. So Blade and Whistler are trying to figure out a plan, and Chris Christopherson is starting to give me some I don't really want to be in this movie anymore vibes.
Now it's not just vampires we gotta worry about. We're gonna have to take on the rest of the world too. I see you alone, surrounded by enemies, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, I'm afraid this is terminal. We've seen this kind of condition before. He wants to get written out of this movie so bad.
Move a finger and you're dead.
How's about this one?
He's got something in his hand. Get out, Blade!
Yeah, there we go. I gotta admit, that was faster than I expected. And this is the second time Blade has seen his father figure die. And in the first movie, I think it was done pretty well, with him forcing himself not to look. It's one of the only times we see Blade shed his badass exterior and be vulnerable. So let's see how Blade reacts this time. Okay. So Blade gets arrested, and it's clear that some of the cops are in cahoots with the vampires. Not all of them, though. Some of them are just normal cops.
You're a stone-cold killer.
And you're sick as fuck.
But after that, the vampires do show up, and they're led by a lady whose performance is very interesting.
I like your tattoos. Do they mean anything?
The way she talks is just kind of weird, and I think it's because her vampire fangs are messing up her line delivery. I feel bad for her. Can you guys just dub in her lines? She's having a hard time.
I should have ripped his bleeding heart out when I had the chance.
Yeah, you're doing great, sweetie. She is also being assisted by Triple H, playing a character named Jarko Grimwood. A name that is so ridiculous that I fully believed it had to be a comic book character. But no, this is an original character. This script really is full of bangers. And it may not seem like it nowadays, but back in the day, having a pro wrestler in your movie was kind of a kiss of death. But now, wrestlers are pretty good at acting all of a sudden. It's pretty annoying. The bad movie fandom has never truly recovered from this. So Blade is about to be captured by the vampires, and he's saved just in the nick of time by Deadpool. And it may not seem like it nowadays, but back in the day, having Ryan Reynolds in your movie was kind of a kiss of death. But now people just like him all of a sudden. It's pretty annoying. The bad movie fandom has truly never recovered from this. And yeah, it goes without saying that everything Ryan Reynolds has to say in this movie is violently unfunny.
And unlike typical vampires, her fangs are located in her vagina. Moving on.
You're a stupid man! A stupid man!
Also, by now, the action has truly devolved to the point where it is just embarrassing. When you compare the action between this and Blade 1, it is just pathetic now. Nobody cares anymore. For some reason, this movie has a lot of slapping, and it doesn't look very cool. Also, we now meet Jessica Biel, who shoots a bow and arrow. Except her arrows have the unique property of making the movie really ugly whenever she shoots them. What the fuck am I looking at? In fact, all of the editing in this movie is bad. You can make the argument that it's trying to be stylistic, but most of the time, you don't really know what you're looking at. It's not quite Catwoman levels of bad, but it really isn't much better. So anyway, Blade and his new friends walk out of the police station that they just destroyed. I'm sorry, Blade actually doesn't walk out. He has fucking CGI superpowers now. After this, Jessica Biel reveals that she is Whistler's secret daughter. But in the first movie, Whistler told us that all of his family members were killed by vampires. But I mean, it wouldn't be a Blade sequel without a weird retcon, so whatever. Maybe your super powerful secret vampire hunting ninja daughter could have helped us sooner. And it's not like he didn't know. According to this movie, he knew she was out there. He just didn't want to hang out with her. So the Midnight Suns tell Blade that the main villain of this movie is the man himself, Dracula.
Dracula's only one of the names he's gone by. The Babylonians worshipped him as Dagon, and now they call him Drake.
And yeah, in this movie, Dracula just kind of looks like a guy. This really is the most normal looking Dracula I've ever seen in any movie. He looks like a gay porn star. I can't deal with this dude. Dracula decides that he's sick of Blade and his gang of vampire hunters. So he just walks up to their secret superhero lair. That's right. He just walks right in. That is because the lady in charge of their security cameras is blind. I truly cannot make this shit up. So Dracula kills all of them pretty easily because Blade and Jessica Biel aren't there, and they have no other security measures whatsoever. Outside of Deadpool and Jessica Biel, these guys are the least prepared and least skilled vampire hunters ever. But anyway, it's okay because now we have less side characters to worry about. Oh wait, I guess Natasha Lyonne is alive? I don't know, it's a little confusing.
Use it.
Use what? A gun? The cure?
Use it.
Use what? Is she not dead? I can't tell.
Use it.
Use what? See, here's the thing. I mentioned this earlier, but this universe establishes in the first movie that you can cure vampirism. But there is no point in any of these movies where we're actually told how that works. The nurse lady in the first movie was a vampire for like a few days, and then she makes the cure, and she's fine after that. In the second movie, Whistler is a vampire, but then they give him the cure, and after a single night, he's perfectly fine. He's a normal human after that. And for a while, I thought, okay, as long as they've been freshly bitten, it's a lot easier to turn them into a normal human, right? But no, in this movie, Ryan Reynolds reveals that he was a vampire for years, and then he took a cure and just became a normal dude. So it leaves me wondering, what are the rules of this universe? Is vampire slaying even necessary? I don't know, I guess Blade is just doing it for the love of the sport at this point. Oh, and by the way, I guess Dracula decided not to kill Ryan Reynolds when he was raiding their base, because I can't have anything in this fucking movie. Dracula kidnaps both Ryan Reynolds and the little daughter of the blind lady to use as bait or something for Blade to come and rescue them. But like, I don't think you really needed to kidnap anybody to lure in Blade. He was going to show up anyway. It was on his to-do list. I don't know why you bothered. So now Blade has to go through the vampire base and kill all the vampires, just like in the other two movies. Except this is somehow worse. Yes, all of these sequels have just tried to copy the formula of the first one, and each one of them has been a little worse at doing that. And we have Ryan Reynolds fighting Triple H, who dutifully waits patiently while he gets punched in the face. I mean, he's a fucking wrestler. What can I expect? This is what you're gonna get. And while this is happening, Blade is fighting Dracula in what is probably the worst fight in the whole trilogy. Just more lazy, awkward attacks. Oh, and that doesn't look like Wesley Snipes to me. And then Dracula turns into like a Diablo monster, and he still has his fucking stupid ass Hot Topic necklace on. But in the end, Blade saves the day by sticking a techno doohickey into Dracula and releasing a magical serum that kills all the vampires, very conveniently. But before Dracula dies, he leaves Blade with some parting wisdom.
Sooner or later, the thirst always wins.
Except that is not true, because we have a cure for vampirism. And after this, the cops arrive, and they find Blade presumably dead. And we get a very sad pan out to a fully CGI city, just like in Catwoman. Man, I wish I was watching Catwoman right now. But then, the movie ends with Blade on an operating table, when suddenly, that's right, we get the legendary CG eyes. Except that isn't actually what happened. Yeah, that's an alternate ending. My version didn't have that. In my version, Blade's body just turns into Dracula, which makes no fucking sense. Why would Dracula willingly shapeshift into Blade to protect him? But yeah, everybody fucking talks about the CG eyes, and I was very excited to see them. And I couldn't even have that. This is fucking bullshit. It's just not fair. At the end of the day, the biggest problem with all these Blade sequels is that they don't really try anything new. They're both just trying to recapture the magic of the first movie, and you can't do that. Apparently the original idea was for Blade to fail to stop the vampire apocalypse in the first movie. And after that, each movie was going to show the world getting progressively worse, with it eventually evolving into a post-apocalyptic movie akin to I Am Legend. And that sounds so much more interesting than what we got. And I've read that the current MCU Blade movie is having some development issues because they can't really get the plot or the action down, and Mahershala Ali is really annoyed with the whole process, and they apparently only have 2 action scenes planned. If I watch the MCU Blade movie and the action sucks and it's not violent and there are no vampires and nothing happens, I think I'm gonna fucking lose it. I can't watch another bad Blade movie. Society has moved past the need for bad Blade movies. But anyway, this movie was just about as bad as I expected. I don't think it has a single redeemable quality other than the fact that its incompetence is kind of impressive. But sadly, it isn't even as funny as some of the other movies we've watched in this series, which is kind of disappointing. So we're gonna just drop this into the tier list real quick, and I'm gonna give Blade Trinity a 2 out of 10.
I was a Catholic schoolgirl. Once.
I was there when they crucified him.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a good Catholic schoolgirl. Once.
I was there when they crucified him.
I was there at Woodstock.